Welcome everybody to another episode of the Free to Soar podcast. I'm your host, Connie Jones, and I appreciate you being with us today. And we've got another treat for you, somebody that I just absolutely love. We actually just recorded her podcast, and so we do a lot together. We've kind of been business besties, like she said, in the over the last year. We've really gotten to know each other, and when you just find somebody that's super aligned with you, it's just really fun. And so I enjoy her, and I know that you guys are going to enjoy her and reap some amazing wisdom from her too. But it's Jaime White of Believe Crew. And welcome, Jaime. We're excited that you're here.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So I'll read I'll do a quick introduction on Jaime, and then I'll let her tell you who she is and what she's so passionate about putting out in the world from her heart also. Like I said, Jaime is the founder of the Believe Crew. She is an entrepreneurial strategist and life coach dedicated to empowering individuals, couples, and families to live purposefully. That's so beautiful. With a focus on nurturing legacy and fostering soul alignment, Jaime's personalized approach helps clients navigate transitions and reinvent themselves with clarity and purpose. Absolutely what we're here for. So she nurtures legacy and she empowers growth in individuals, couples, and families. And so again, welcome, Jaime. And I want you to let's start with, before you tell us what does that look like? What are you so passionate about helping families and individuals and couples do? And what does that really look like specifically? Tell us, how'd you get into this? How did you discover your calling? Because it's definitely is purpose for you.
Yeah. So I grew up in family business. And what I like to say is I don't even understand some of the entrepreneurial language. I speak ESL, entrepreneur as a second language.
I love that. Yes. You just know it.
Yeah. Yep. And so really, what I love the system, the family business system. I love what we grew up in. And yet there were challenges that I didn't realize were happening behind the scenes. As a kid, it wasn't until I was 18 and my mom found out that she had cancer that I even knew that there were, potential for issues in life. And so I kind of was raised in this bubble, it's like a family business fishbowl, we don't even know a lot of what's going on outside. We really have entrepreneurial friends, and just kind of this, work ethic that we worked weekends, we worked holidays if we needed to, and then we vacationed when everyone else was working. So it was just this different environment. And then after my mom got cancer, and we realized that it was probably a lot more emotional behind the scenes than what I saw as a kid. And then my parents, when I was 18, they asked if I wanted to start a furniture store. So because they were entrepreneurial and they had space, they thought, well, fun, we can start another business. We have someone that's old enough.
We've got a prime candidate at this point.
We got another family member. She checks all the boxes. We don't even need to do an interview. And so no retail experience in the family, no business training, just throw you in. I started in banking. I had a banking apprenticeship and a diploma, and I was legal. And so it's time to be in the family business.
That's all you need.
That's all you need. And so about 2 weeks in, I realized I was in way over my head. Actually, it was a little bit more than 2 weeks in, but 2 weeks in after we opened the doors. Because I realized I didn't know how to replace the furniture if anything sold, but I realized the goal was to sell something. So then I needed to, work around my fears. So I actually hired my first employee. 18, and my parents were like, do you really need that? I didn't know. They're like, but again, the expectation, in a way, we're given this gift as entrepreneurial kids where, our parents believe in us and they give us opportunities. They trust us early on with things that we really shouldn't be trusted with because we're really not ready. But then over time, we kind of learn through experiences. We're given those opportunities. And at the same time, it doesn't necessarily grow our confidence, if that makes sense. I know you and I talked about this a little bit on the podcast we were just recording on my podcast, and how,
which throw a plug in for
business addicts. Yeah. So yes.
Yes. So business addicts, just say a little bit about what it is. And yes, I just did an interview on there. So, but I want people to check out your check out your podcast.
Yeah. So
too.
Kevin and I share our story of addiction. As a Christian couple, we didn't know what we were getting into and what it would take to overcome that. And so that's kind of the beginning. And it sort of was like from struggle to superpower, what does it take?
Yes.
And then this season is really about family business and really the support behind that. So thank you for being on there and sharing your wisdom. And one of the things that you brought up was about, that sometimes we need to be trained in things like from other people that like say communication or conversations. In family business, we're not trained on communications and conversations. The parents lead and then the kids sort of get in line, and then when you don't get in line, then it becomes a little bit more dramatic. And
exactly.
I think it's fairly common that people get fired multiple times.
I would imagine, yes.
And nobody leaves, just because you're fired, nobody leaves.
Where are you going?
So I really, as a young mom in business, then I just devoured books in the library when I wasn't working. It was like, how can I learn this? And again, this was pre-internet or when internet was in dial-up mode. And so I was still consuming content in the library. I can't imagine today. But then I really, really found my lane, you could say, when I came into the businesses that were already existing that my parents had started. That was not furniture and design related, because I was not a custom furniture designer. I was more like, let me help scale this. And the problem is I didn't realize that I didn't know what limiting beliefs were. And so I didn't realize that we were going to run into those things, as I had ideas and visions and saw that this could be possible, that my dad really only wanted 5 duplexes. And so the bigger we got, the more scary it got, the fears that came up. And the other thing was he had a couple of limiting beliefs that I believe he still has, because he does not like coaching. And one of them was that second generation businesses fail, which there is a significant percentage of that, right? He's not wrong, but it doesn't mean that they all do.
That they all do, exactly. Well, and you can transform that.
Right.
I mean, that may be the statistic, but how do we break that?
Right. It's kind of like the 5-minute mile, right? When everybody thought you couldn't have a 5-minute mile, and then someone broke it, and then everybody else thought they could do it too. And so, we weren't looking for that. He was like pretty consistent. And like, even though we understood that as kids, the business is going to be yours, that carrot is kind of always held over there. But at the same time, there were these weird belief systems that kind of made it so that nothing was really happening. And one of the other ones was that women don't know their place. And that one was really kind of one of the ones that finally made it so that it wasn't the right fit. But even when I was in the family business, there was starting to be this calling. And it came sort of from the space of like, man, I would love to like mediate in family business or, help. Does anybody else need help with these conversations? Like
you saw
I saw the need. I saw it. I lived it. I wanted someone else, and I didn't know where to find that person. I didn't know who they were.
Right.
I didn't know people like you existed out there in the world. Right. And so I didn't know how to find that, or even how to be that, or believe it was possible. So the calling came before I really even knew that it was a thing already. I thought I was inventing it.
Yeah. Well, it often does come out of our story. I mean, that's most every time it does, out of a need that we see, and something that either breaks our heart or makes our soul sing, or that we've experienced struggle in, God turns it into purpose because we have insight and wisdom there, that and experience there that we can bring to others who are experiencing it. And it's such a beautiful, rich gift that that you are able to give others now. And so, so fast forward, tell us where then, what are you so passionate about doing with families in business now, and what does that look like for you?
Well, it's funny because specifically our tagline is nurturing legacy, empowering growth. And my husband kind of turned to me at one point and he's like, are we sort of deceiving people with that tagline? Because in the end, we end up helping families sometimes separate, and not necessarily where they're not talking to each other, but more helping them realize that what they have now doesn't have to be like, everybody doesn't have to stay in the business in order for us to, we can support each other in new ways, and what is your individual legacy as an entrepreneur, as a family member, without it needing to be this family business. So that actually ended up being where we found ourselves, and really, again, speaks to my story. But what we see happening is that business owners, when they get close to retirement age, or the age they think they were going to retire, without realizing that entrepreneurs actually don't retire. And if they do, it's 84, not 62. So we come into it thinking that, they're going to want to retire like other business owners do. And they end up creating a beautiful business that makes good money, and they have some time freedom. And then the son is getting close to 40 or in their early 40s. And they're like, hey, are you moving over?
There you go.
And the parents are like, what are you talking about? And they don't actually have the conversation. They don't actually have that crucial conversation, or even know that it needs to be had. They just start fighting, and they don't know why.
Yes, exactly. Well, and they don't have the understanding, the clarity within themselves and the insight to really understand what's going on. They just feel resentful, or they have these feelings and these thoughts that they don't know what to do with. They don't know how to have the hard conversations. They don't know how to, like we talked about in my episode a few minutes ago, they don't know how to even trust what's going on inside of them to be able to know what it is and how they want to handle it. And so they just shove it down or avoid it, and then it just comes out sideways in some way. And, and things go, to a bad place quickly, to a negative place quickly.
So I would say that the vision that we see, for me, it's a heart for entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs that want to create legacy, or create a legacy, or be so in alignment with themselves and explore those huge dreams. So whether it's in a family business, or a visionary that wants a partner alongside of them, because I know the power that, like, my gifts and talents help people create clarity when they're not sure where that clarity is, because I have the ability to discern, like I have high discernment. And so because I've gotten so clear on my gifts, I know where I can fit in with their gifts. And it's just so fun, like you say.
It is. Oh my gosh, it doesn't feel like work.
No,
it's when it's your calling. There are days when and I don't want to mistake and give people the wrong idea. When it's your calling, it doesn't mean that you don't get tired, or that there are days that you're weary, or whatever, or it feels challenging in some way. It's always, we had this discussion a few minutes ago too. It's entrepreneur journey is the greatest, is the hardest, and the most beautiful, rewarding journey that any of us could ever go on, because it pulls everything out of us to have to take a look at, and to grow in, and to, expand in, and, to challenge in ourselves, in order to be able to lead the business that we really want to lead. We have to learn how to get out of our own way. And so, so tell me, what do you see? Let's talk some of the specifics in family business. Like, what are the things that you see, and tell us some of the challenges, but then the successes, and how you've helped people really, you mentioned one a few minutes ago, that not everybody has to be in the family business. What else are you seeing in family business challenges?
So,
and success stories.
Yeah. Well, I think, the idea of reinventing ourselves and figuring out who we need to be in the process, I think, again, kind of going into that retirement space, we get comfortable. And my husband and I are experiencing that and going through that right now. And part of it is because we want to walk where we ask our clients to walk. And so we're in a space in our home where, according to some of the things that the report card that I think I should judge myself on, based on when I was 18 was, being married, having a family, doing life, having 2 cars and a couple kids, and having a home that, you could retire in. And then it's like, wait, okay, but what happens when we get there? Then do we reinvent ourselves? Do we realize that that's the time that we need to reinvent ourselves? And so Kevin actually showed me I think it was like an Instagram story the other day about eagles, where when they turn 40, they have a decision to make. They can either die, or they can go and pound their beak against the mountain for 4 months until it falls off and it regrows a new beak. And then they take their new beak to pull their claws off and then regrow their claws for 4 months. So I haven't fact checked this, but this is ultimately what's happening in our lives that we don't, I wasn't trained on. I don't know about you, but I just sort of thought there was like this comfortable level we were trying to get to instead of realizing that we need to reinvent ourselves. And so most of the people that we've helped find a new way to do business in alignment with them. And like I said, I'm not good at helping people go back into corporate or something like that. I don't know how to even advise in that space. So it's more of like what is it that you're called to, and how can we really check into what you're called to? And for me, even going through this process of moving, like I live in the same community that I grew up in. I've been in central Wisconsin for 43 years. I was born here, and it's great. I know how to live and do life the way that you do life in central Wisconsin, but I don't know how to reinvent myself in a new place and learn the language of a new country. And, whether that's banking or whether that's actual language. And so when I think about business owners that are comfortable, and then they're, okay, we need to grow, we need to do something more. Sometimes they, feel like you're wandering around in the dark. Why would you choose that? Right? Like, I'm comfortable. Why would I learn a new language now at XYZ age? Fill in the gaps. And so I think that is the biggest mission that I feel called to do, is to help live a life, be that example, be the person that reinvents myself. Go. And if it's, beating my beak against the mountain for 4 months,
and then pulling all your claws out.
And that's the level of pain that we're sometimes going through. And yet it has brought Kevin and I so much closer together, right? And so what we see happen in these family businesses, there's no more challenge. They create addictions, distractions, drama. The drama level is so high in family business when we don't have a big vision and a mission but as soon as they have a mission and a vision and they can rally around that
pulls us in.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
That draws our heart in.
Totally.
That's, that heart-centered business, that purpose, that mission-driven business that is so meaningful and so fulfilling. It's not just comfortable and familiar. It's not just, and business is to be profitable for sure. But like, what is it really about for you? What really makes you feel alive? What really allows you to thrive? What is aligned with who you were made to be? That's it. So that's what I'm so passionate about, is otherwise we do get comfortable. And then, where does that, what's the end story? And you know what? That's okay if that's all you ever want. I don't believe that God creates us that way. I believe he creates us growth minded. And, but if for some reason, someone just feels like, they want that sense of security and comfort and familiarity.
I can speak to that a little bit. So I was there. Right. I was there in the family business. I had this calling. I was starting to design my new office that was going to allow for coaching, that was going to allow me to do both. In my mind, I was going to do both. And even with this move to Mexico and this, desire to sort of research retreat centers and holistic centers and getting people out of the business, again, that was another space where I thought I could do both. I thought I could live in the house we're in, and I thought I could research and do retreat centers. And so in both cases, I was trying to keep what I knew and was comfortable with, and what I didn't experience until I started being willing for the actual transition was letting go. And I didn't want to let go. Surrendering the outcome maybe, but letting go. And
well, we're so loss aversive. I talk about that with my business owners all the time, is that, we hang on to things that don't really work for us, or that are safe, or that are comfortable, that don't really make us come alive and allow us to thrive, because we are afraid of losing something. But really, we don't understand that there's something so much greater that is more aligned with that next version of us that will just feel so alive if we will not so be so afraid of losing.
It's painful.
Yeah.
You are saying it in words, and it is just a little bit more emotional.
It is absolutely painful. Oh, I know. Oh, I totally get it. It absolutely is one of the hardest things for us to do, is to let go and surrender, and to lose something that feels so safe, comfortable, and familiar versus, you know, and when that's, we are safety.
Yes.
Wired people. We want security, you know?
Technically, I did it right when I was 18 because my parents started this furniture store. I mean, it's kind of a long story in terms of the mess that it was started in, because it was started not really as a retail business. It was started in an old storage unit and then was design oriented, which again, I had no experience in and no. And so after the first 2 years, really even fairly soon in, my mom had been diagnosed with cancer. And so she was like, Jaime, should we just shut this down? You know, and I did not want to be a failure. And so because I didn't want to be a failure, I held on thinking that means I'm not a failure. When the reality is I couldn't get it to fly because it wasn't ever in alignment. There was nothing in alignment about it. Did I love portions of it? Yes. Is furniture now in my blood and I want to go to every furniture market? Yes. It's still there. But the business itself was not in alignment for me. It was not in alignment the way it was designed. And yet I did not want to be seen as a failure. So it wasn't until I started doing coaching work that I realized that I admitted to myself, if my dad died, then I would shut that store down. And I realized I was looking for external validation that I was okay and that I wasn't a failure by keeping this store going, even though it wasn't in alignment. And so that fear of failure, fear of success, all wrapped into this warped, belief systems, and kept me holding on, and I couldn't let go.
Oh yeah, wow! But and at what point did you realize? Like, how did you shift into having the courage to let go?
Again, through some coaching, as well as asking myself the question, like, what would I do differently if my dad died? And I realized the first thing that came up is that I would shut the store down. And I realized I need to be willing to do that now. And so I went to him and I told him, I said, I think we need to shut the store down. And he wasn't willing to let go. And so there was more that it took. And so it actually just shut down this last year in 2023. So it was open for 23 years. And it really, it was as beautiful experience as I could make it. And so there's so much about it that was beautiful. And yet it was ultimately because I couldn't let go. And so it didn't ever become what it,
what it could have.
No.
Oh my gosh. That's beautiful though, that you were able to. And finally,
after 27 years.
Hey, it doesn't matter, and the things that you're so right. The things that the stories that we tell ourselves that just aren't true. It didn't have anything to do with whether you're successful or whether you're a failure or what. It just has everything to do with, and this is exactly, we don't pay attention and trust ourselves. We don't trust that inner knowing to, we tell ourselves these narratives that aren't true and that keep us in things that are misaligned for way too long. And don't trust that inner clenching or that, there could be more because of, because we're human, because we have fear, because we, all the things, all the different things that are there that we all see. What else do you see as far as in family business regarding, the having hard conversations, conflict resolution, the drama that what do family businesses need that they don't know that they need?
Let me share a little bit of what it sounds like first. So from what I've heard, now some of these we've worked in some, a little bit more toxic or maybe normal. I'm not sure what perspective. But a lot of times they're coming from the place of feeling like the kids aren't capable. And part of that is fears of their own, right? But and the reality is that the gifts of the kids are different than the gifts of the parent.
Mm-hmm.
But because the parent doesn't often reach out and find out what their gifts are, then they don't necessarily have the ability to turn around and speak to the gifts of the children. And so what I love to do is come in and share with the owners the gifting that I see in them. And so it shifts the conversation, right? Because who else is telling them you have been doing an amazing job? Whether or not they're toxic, like there is something amazing about what they've created, about what they're doing. And then I see their gifts, right? And so having those conversations, but what it sounds like before that, there's things like, I'll try talking and they'll say things like, just let me finish. I have a bad memory. Or I like there's a reason. There's always a good story behind why they need to finish. And I love it. I just say, no problem. I have a good memory. You take your time. Like shifting, just leaning into wherever they are. I mean, we sit in pickup trucks and Menards if we need to, and let it just be real. But the conversations sometimes don't happen. Like there is so much fear around what happens if I tell the kids what I'm really thinking. And I think at its core, I don't think that they're actually acknowledging what they're feeling. And so they don't know how to communicate what they're feeling and thinking, and because it's not even conscious at this point. So a lot of what I see is,
well, they're holding on so tightly probably that and just trying to make it work. And there's probably a lot of fear there that they don't realize. And so they're grasping and don't have any idea what they're really feeling. They haven't had the freedom to feel what they really need to feel.
And I've talked a lot about the multi-generational businesses because ultimately that was a lot of my experience. But the other part that is really driving for me is also in couples. And really family business to me is anyone that is entrepreneurial and, might have some relation, because even if you're not in the business, even if you're not on payroll, you're still a support system for that person.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times entrepreneurs don't always have supportive spouses. Maybe they came from a different background. And so they don't see how visionaries can even be a thing. They're just looking for a paycheck and security in that paycheck. And they're freaked out with the new ideas that these visionaries have. So I really love to lean in and speak to that it's possible, it's okay, and be a support system. I had one entrepreneurial couple, and this is actually a franchise owner, right? So they came from corporate, they're doing a franchise. And a lot of times we hit a cash flow problem. It doesn't mean that the numbers are, it doesn't mean that we're doing something wrong. It's just part of the process. And so, being able to get creative in that space is another thing that I love to help them with, and look at their portfolios in a new way instead of the day-to-day profit and loss, like more of a net worth from an entrepreneurial perspective. And so I was talking to this business owner that was just really beating himself up. And he was like, if I take any more money out of retirement, we could end up divorced. Like, this is just not an option. And I was like, okay, so we're going to have a real conversation with your spouse. You are now an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs have a different way of doing life and business. And we need to communicate that with them, bring them along with them, with us on the journey. And oftentimes what we find is they're the biggest supporters, but they need communication. They need to understand that this is an entrepreneurial lifestyle, and we need training. We need education on that conversation. Yeah.
For sure. Oh, that's a great point. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, and what about the, as a system, and like if several family members are in the business, do you find that people typically know how to handle conflict well?
That's cute.
Or do they, and to communicate? And
that's really cute, Connie.
What are the needs there? Yeah. What are the needs there? Like, as far as because I find that is not the case at all. Typically, they don't have any idea that they're not even having conversations with each other, but they wouldn't know how to begin.
So we really recommend like a facilitated version first. But what we started doing with our family is we started hosting family meetings where everyone had a voice and we could be outvoted. Kevin and I could be outvoted, and really took out this, I don't know that I would call it, like a patriarchal or a matriarchal system, but more of a, dictatorship. So my oldest, who of course was with us, for 20 years before we started implementing these family meetings. And we had him run one of the first family meetings. And afterwards, he said, well, I think that a dictatorship is more efficient, but I think that this version is more effective. So it was like, insight. Like it felt like a blessing from him, even though we hadn't necessarily raised him in that way. And so we really encourage the families to create space for family meetings where you can have any discussion on the table. It doesn't have to be business related, but all of that impacts the business and the health of the business and the health of the family. And so creating space for those family discussions where it is not, parent run and led in a way where there's basically it's like Robert's Rules of Orders where we let everyone have a vote. Our 6-year-old, our 8-year-old, and 10-year-old have a vote. And the 4-year-old really doesn't pay attention, but the 8 and the 10-year-old are so, it is amazing how they actually have an intuition. We're helping them develop that and saying, like we sat down with them even in this move and we said, guys, we feel, with this move that we would like to know from you, when do you feel is the right time for us to move? Yes. And everyone had the same answer. Connie, everyone checked in and I had the 10-year-old tell me, I think June. And my 17-year-old was like, yeah, I get June, maybe July, but otherwise, that sounds good. And so we have everyone on the same page in a huge transition for our family.
Yes.
So I can only speak to my own experience in this, but I would love for families to be implementing this and allowing kids to have a voice and helping them trust their intuition. But what we see is the parents haven't been trusting theirs, so they don't know how to turn around and trust the kids.
They don't know how to teach what they don't have. Yes. They don't know how to give what they don't have. Exactly. Because no one has developed it in them. And those are the things that we don't just come out of. Well, it gets programmed out of us.
Right.
We do have an intuition coming out of the womb, but it gets so programmed out of us that we learn not to trust it. Right. So we shut it off. And then it's one of our greatest superpowers that we have not empowered. And so it's, learning how to do that. That's one of the things that I had to really do, really work through as an entrepreneur when I, along the way is learning how to listen to that inner voice.
I would love to meet more soul schooling families. We started with virtual schooling and then moved to homeschooling and then moved to unschooling. Yeah. And really what unschooling became was unschooling me, unschooling Kevin on what we think this has to look like. And so then now we've transitioned to soul schooling where the kids get to choose what they're doing and we're completely comfortable that they're going to be fine. And helping train them, in the character building and some of the other, like trusting their intuition. And those are the things that we're training on instead of reading and writing around here.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's those intrinsic skills that we don't teach. And we don't, for the most part, unless we have coaching, are not getting training on those ourselves. And so we're missing a huge, we're using half of our power, half of our ability, and the greatest, most powerful parts of us have been shut down because we're trying to do everything through knowledge and intellect rather than wisdom and intuition and inner knowing. And it's a shame when we are, we're not leading from our whole self, leading holistically, leading from that holistic place. Wholehearted leadership. And I see that a lot too. So, well, let me change gears for just a second and tell me, what are some of the challenges that you have overcome in business that looking back now, you just see as huge wins that you feel like have really made you a better leader and have allowed you to grow your business to the level that it has, and that you are able to enjoy more freedom and impact and more enjoyment in your days, rather than, just getting by and staying in the urgent and the reactive and the overwhelm and the overextension. What are the things that you feel like have allowed you to be your best?
So I'm a huge advocate for all the different assessments, personality assessments, spiritual gifting, understanding those things. I started like many business owners where I didn't know how to have those crucial conversations. I had someone that was working for me that was a sales performer, and she knew how to keep her job because her numbers worked. And it's really hard to even think about letting go of someone that is, a great performer. And I didn't know how to have those conversations. So I was an enabler. I would go behind the scenes when she would get an email that I knew was going to tick her off. And I would, send a quick other one that was going to, just total enablement behavior instead of saying, this is how we handle that and having those crucial conversations. I did not. No.
Yeah.
Wasn't happening. And so learning how to disconnect from that stuff and really grow personally in valuing who we are, what we do as business owners, learning how to fire clients like that. I mean, no way. When I'm like trying to build a business, the last thing I'm going to do is fire a client. And even when I started learning that, we had so many customer service oriented people. And so I knew that when there was a problem, it was a problem, right? This was a problem. And so I absolutely fired that client, right? And my dad got to the point where he was not trusting us and he wasn't trusting what we were doing. And he was like, I want the information for those people. I want them to, reach out and call me because I want to, he was always looking for, what are you guys doing wrong? And so anyway, at first I was annoyed by it. And then I was like, wait, he wants the numbers of the 1% of people that we don't want to work with. I am going to give it to him. Like I was not in a good place. And I was like, he can have them. They can have their number. I'd be like, here's his cell phone. He was an offhand business owner, that could do and go where he wanted with total freedom. And he wants the numbers of the people that we don't want to work with. That's
hilarious. Yeah, exactly.
But it took a long time for me to value that. And now I understand why, because he didn't, right? He didn't train me to value what we were doing and value ourselves. And I mean, I know that he struggles with the same things. And so learning those things, but ultimately understanding who I am and then who are some of the other people so that I can communicate or understand where they're coming from. There's a assessment that I love out there called life languages. And it is not super popular in the business world, but it really speaks even from a Christian perspective of what is our gifting? And when I first heard that, prayed over me, thank you for being a leader. Thank you for being courageous. And I just was bawling because I was waiting for other people around me to lead, not realizing that I was meant to be that leader and to step into that with courage. And, so that, and then the last thing I'll share is, we called it the baby effect in the building because I, as many business owners, struggled to give up what I love to do and what I did well. I was quick to give up the things I didn't do well.
Absolutely. We all are, for sure.
But the things that I did well, I wasn't able to give up until I brought a baby with me into the office. And so then I had no hands. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to teach this to you.
You to have to. Yes. That's great. So I love it.
It worked really, really well. The 3 girls that were now running the companies that were the family business, they learned at entry level and I trained them up because I was holding a baby and couldn't do it. But I really learned to make a list of the things that are my responsibilities and go to each of my employees and say, what would you like to take off my plate? And be willing to let go of the things that I loved a lot because I realized that I could still have impact and oversight in those things without having to do the things.
Exactly.
So that's huge. Yeah, that was some of the biggest stuff that I learned.
Yeah, that's so good. I experienced that too as I began to let go and as I began to become the visionary CEO of the company and, and not handling everything myself. And that was a really big, it exposes all vulnerabilities and all, it's like, oh my gosh, it's such a scary, vulnerable place to be, but such a beautiful place. And we're keeping a lid on our business until we're willing to do that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But it is uncomfortable. So thanks for sharing that. Wow. Well, you mentioned the word Christian and this is a Christian, for a podcast for Christian business owners and you are a Christian business owner. And, so talk about how being a Christian business owner is different for you from like, how does your being a Christian impact you as the business owner that you are? Then how does it impact you, the way that you lead your business?
So I might take this in a little different direction than some.
That's all right.
Because
whatever is on your heart.
I grew up in a Christian home church for 42 years of my life. And yet sometimes some of the things that I thought I knew were actually holding me back and I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Like I thought the word inspiring was someone that had too much pride and too much ego. And so I didn't give myself permission to step into that space. And so some of the things that I've had to unlearn are a little bit of the things that
the religious,
my perspectives on it, whether or not it was being taught or trained, it was my interpretation of what was being taught. And I found that even like our gifting and our spiritual gifting, like there's many people that want to know these things, but they don't know how. And so Kevin and I have really leaned into how can we help people understand their spiritual giftings in these places. And like I said, that life languages assessment, for me to know that it's in like my need is to innovate. But then that also means that I often have a really high gifting of discernment and prophecy. Like that comes with those. That's a language that I speak really well. And so I really love coming from a place of believing that we have everything we need inside of us, that he's, really, and that's how we can be connected in. So I'm constantly in a form of like, how do I embrace believing and trusting and surrendering the outcome while prayerfully, intentionally, asking, where are you calling me next? And so for me, I love Lori Kosinick's books, The Laws of the Universe and the Bible. She's bringing that together in that space. And so prayers, like what would it take? Like just really releasing it to God and just saying, what would it take for me to have clarity on this? And so what happened when I was in business with my dad is I did say, what would it take for me to be disconnected from my dad? Because it was no longer the right fit and I couldn't do it myself. And so he really was the one to do it. Like I have to actually say thank you for firing me because I couldn't disconnect. But I really believe that it was God closing that door and me being willing to listen to that calling because I wanted to stay and I wanted to think I could make a difference in that organization. But he was very clear and the doors were very much shut. And I didn't want to resist it, but I definitely was emotional about it. So,
oh, that's beautiful. And then, so it's just being in that space of being yielded to what your heart yielded and your will yielded to God.
Yeah.
And attuned to him and just asking him on the daily, like I do, just, okay, what's on your heart today? What are you leading? What wisdom is there for me today? And really learning how to tune into that rather than just trusting our intellect and
100%.
And what we've always known or what feels comfortable and easy or familiar.
I like to think about Noah.
Or what we think we have to do.
Yeah, right. I like to think about Noah and the download that, God gave him. Like there wasn't proof that it was going to make sense, that it was going to look good to others, that it, and so I think about what he asks us to do. We can't look for proof that it's going to be already done. I can't say, well, so-and-so is doing this. Like God could give us direct downloads that make no sense to anybody else, like building an ark. And it's our mission. It's our vision and our download, and we need to own it. And that's really what I use for inspiration to keep me in alignment.
I love that. And we engage I'm learning how to have dominion over those things. Jesus came that we have dominion in our life and in our businesses. And we do that by activating and engaging our faith, by believing what God says when he downloads something to us, when, taking that and saying, yes, I receive that. And I believe that, it's just, I choose to believe that. Help me with my unbelief. But I'm going to engage my faith in that. And I'm going to take that on and I'm going to trust that I have everything inside of me and around me to fulfill that mission that you've given me. And it's a trust walk. From
it's
there.
huge.
And that's beautiful.
The coach that we worked with, he said, this is a calling, right? Like sometimes coaching, I feel like is one of the hardest businesses. And we had multiple businesses in the family business. I feel like coaching is the hardest business to start. And so we were, saying to him financially at one point, we're like, we have 6 kids, like this is, and he's like, God might ask you to go down to 0. And I was just sort of like, what? Like we have 6 kids. Do you know what you're saying? And along the way, letting go of my attachment to money and to the belief that, having rentals and having a certain amount of money in the bank account is what makes me safe versus trusting that whatever he asks us to do for that next step, no matter if I understand it, no matter if it makes logical sense, Kevin and I have stepped into that in a way where we're just like blown away by the miracles and the crazy, weird things that happen that we're just like, who knew? Who knew?
Well, we have to create space for him to show up.
Unbelievable.
He wants to show up in the details. He is in the details. But we have to give him room to show up because, and get out of the way sometimes and honor what he's asking us to do. And that's the hardest thing in the world. It really is because we want security and safety, for sure. Well, is there, I know we've got to close for today, but you've just been amazing. And thank you so much. Is there 2 quick questions? How can, if people want to connect with you, how do they connect with you and learn more about you? So first share that and then leave us with, is there anything else that you want to say to that business? Anything that just is heartfelt that you want to say to that business owner out there, whether it's family business or whatever, that, maybe in the middle of a challenge and they're questioning something and some support or encouragement that you want to give them. Let's end with those 2 things.
So first, our website is believecrew.com. And so that's a great way to reach out and connect with us. And my name is Jaime White, spelled Jaime. And that is like one of the most common or, like not easy to Google names. So, so try.
Yep, I love it though.
Trying to find me on LinkedIn might be through Connie Jones. Because, you'll be lost in a sea of Jaime White.
Which you would be surprised at how many people don't know how to spell Connie.
Okay, well then, actually, not taking it personally.
It's shocking. It's shocking. Now, Jones, that's a sad day when somebody doesn't know how to spell Jones. And White, I guess, is the same way.
Yeah.
But Connie, but Jaime is a little less.
It can be a couple different ways. So
that's right.
But really, what comes to mind is thinking about all of the business owners that are out there and entrepreneurs that are out there, and just know that whatever that whisper is in your heart, and I know, I personally know how hard this is, because a lot of times what I hear is business owners want to start a different business before they go to the one that's in their heart. And I think it's like this, again, a new way of creating a safety net or a barrier so that we don't hurt ourselves in the process, but really opening up to that whisper that's in your heart, write it down and realize that that is the business that you might be called to start first, and or lean into if you're already in business, transition into, because what I find is that we sometimes create these lies or these beliefs that it's going to be easier to start a different business or go in a different direction. And then later we can go to the one that's in our heart, but really just to do the work that it takes to get to the one that's the whisper in the heart, because it is literally going to be amazing.
Yes. Oh, no doubt. That's incredible. That God business, that calling business, that business that is the extraordinary, not the ordinary business. And it's the one that we were made for. Yeah. And if we don't listen to that whisper, it will become a roar, or it will go away and there will be all kinds of dis-ease in our body until we acknowledge it, for sure. So thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. And thanks for being here today again, and for just being who you are and the passion and the purpose that you pour out in the world every day. So,
am I inspiring? Because now I'm okay with that word.
You are. You're such an inspiration. I don't know
why. I thought it wasn't Christian.
Hey,
it wasn't. Right? It's not Christian.
Isn't it crazy the things that that we just don't have any, our perspective is just skewed for some reason. And, God just has to give us a new perspective about.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love it. Well, thank you. Yes, you are inspiring. and we appreciate your inspiration on this podcast today. So, and speaking of, I hope you guys were inspired. I hope you were empowered and equipped today, and because that's what we are all about. And if it did inspire you in some way and you know of someone who needs to hear it, please share it with a friend or a colleague or a loved one. And I hope that you'll join us right back here next time on for the next episode. And thanks again, Jaime, for being here with us. And wherever you guys are in your day, I hope it is wonderful. And I hope you are listening to your heart and following it because that's where God is. And and we can't go wrong when we follow him. All right, you guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye. Thanks for joining me today on the Free to Soar podcast, where we empower and equip you to lead the business and the life of your dreams with freedom, impact, enjoyment, and abundance. I look forward to our next episode together, and I invite you to subscribe to be notified of new episodes as they are released. Please share this or your favorite episode with a friend or a loved one, and I'd love it if you'd leave a review on iTunes and Spotify.